Good morning, everybody. So if you have your phones with you, I encourage you to pull up maps.rutgers.edu because we could talk a lot about what's going on. You can look at it live as I'm talking about it, which is probably a lot easier than me just kind of discussing it and looking at bullets. And I encourage you to kind of go through it yourself. So why did we create the map? I think that's the starting point. As you know, a lot of us go to other universities, and a lot of our internal staff at IPNO is just like, well, I've been to this university and they had this map and it was great to get around. And our old map was buildings based. You would search for a building, it would tell you where the building is, but it really didn't give you a perspective of the entire university. So the first thing we did when we heard this enough was, well, let's actually benchmark and see what our partners have done, see what the Big Ten has done, look at their campus maps and see what features we like. As you know, Rutgers is a pretty unique university in a lot of different ways, but we have a lot of similarities with our partners, the kind of users we have. There's a lot of faculty, staff, and students, but we also have a lot of visitors coming to the campus for the first time. And as you can, and from what all of you know with Rutgers, it's a little bit difficult to navigate sometimes. So looking at how other universities handled it gave us a lot of great ideas from where to start from. So from that, we put together some goals for the University GIS Services Initiative. The first was to provide that public-facing portal that our campus community would use as well as visitors and make it user-friendly and interactive and visually appealing, making it easier for people to get around. And second, we have a lot of great information stored within IPNO that sometimes you have to go to a couple different people to access. We said if we're going to make this GIS system robust enough for not only our public users, let's look at what we have in-house and create this secure behind-the-scenes system that we can make it easier for our own internal users to use, like utilities, like real estate information. And that can save a lot of those first step questions that we're usually going around, you know, if a new building is being proposed. You can look at this and get a lot of information from the secure system. So this gives you an overview of how our first 3 years have broken out. I'm going to be talking mainly about year one right now. So at this point, I think it's a little bit easier for me to go to the actual website. So as you can see, we have the entire state. Our first year one initiative was to show really the three main campuses. I'll talk a little bit about year two, which will go into our other properties associated with the university. But it allows you to, let's just go to Camden, to click on that area. Sorry, it's a little bit hard without a mouse. But also for a visitor, okay, what are the popular destinations here? And we had a lot of different working groups that we worked with within Camden, Newark, and RBHS, and New Brunswick to help develop, okay, where are your users going? Where do you get the most questions as far as where they need to get to? So we helped develop this list that would automatically bring them to Armitage Hall. And from that, they can get directions using Google. And hopefully it shows me, oh, it's showing me it in New York right now. But as long as your IP is correct, it would get you directions from where you currently were located to Armitage Hall. And also gave you more information as far as who's assigned space in there, as well as any websites associated with those buildings. We also, a huge thing, obviously, is parking. So we created a layer that people were able to turn on and show all the parking lots. And if they wanted to get more information on how to get a permit, or if you're a student a first time or a visitor, you could click on the DOTS website and it would take you there and you could find out more about parking. I'll talk a little bit more about parking later since it's an issue that has come up a lot as we've developed this website. Other things that we worked with, we created a steering committee for this process to find out what people wanted to get out of this campus map if we were going to put all this energy into developing this campus map. And a lot of them were just overlays. If you're going to create these overlays, let's look at types of destinations. If people are trying to get to academic buildings, you can turn on the academic button and it will shade all of the academic buildings. Any healthcare related facilities, which you're not seeing on this right now, any athletic related facilities. Also the bus routes, since that's, especially in New Brunswick, a critical way of getting around. So it shows all the bus routes. This is actually pulled directly from Transloc, which actually oversees the electronic bus route information. So it is updated if there's any route changes, which is critical, as well as showing any walking paths of how to get around. So as you go in, you can see those a little bit better. And I think one of the great features that we put in as well this first time around was dining options. This is one of my favorite to show. So we're always looking to link to great websites that will give us more information. If you've been down to Rutgers University Camden, you know the Starbucks usually has a huge line. So one of the websites we were able to link to, even though it's empty now because school's out, is the Starbucks. So you can see how long the Starbucks line is. Camden liked that a lot. So I think I've gone through a lot of the information that we put on the first. You are actually able to take a snapshot if you're looking at a map. So let's go back, go up to New Brunswick. So you are actually able to take a snapshot and share information. Oh, I still have food turned on. And share that information, like just say, oh, I'm going to meet you at Livingston Apartments Building A at the diner. You can take a snapshot, you can zoom into that and send it through social media. We also have downloadable maps for each of the areas. So they're static and we update them as new information becomes available, but that way people are able to print out maps of each of the campuses. Obviously we have several for New Brunswick since it's such a huge campus, but it at least provides some basic information if people want to print it out. Are there any questions about the year one before I move on? No, okay. As I said, feel free to play on your phone, and if you have any questions about what we've done so far, let me know. I'm gonna go back to, it's printing, sorry. How did you get it to go?
It was control.
Yep. There we go. So these are all the things I went through for year one functionality that we accomplished. We also have an email that if you do see a mistake, I mean, obviously this is a lot of information to be putting out there. Sometimes there are corrections that need to be made, and that's been really helpful that people have gone through the map and maybe spotted something that needed to be changed, or they had a suggestion. So we've been getting a lot of great emails from people as they've been using the website of, well, this is great, but I'd like to see you guys do this with parking. So we've got a lot of great feedback that way. So some of our analytics from the first year of being live. So as you can see, there's two big spikes. I think most of you guys can figure out what those are, the starts of the semester. So that's good. That's what we wanted. Oh, and actually one of the features I didn't show was the search feature, which based on feedback we got from steering committee members, we actually linked all the buildings to their code with students as far as the classroom abbreviations. So I think we've seen a lot of traction with that. So if somebody looks and says, what's ARC? They can type in ARC and they'll get Allison Road Classroom and know where their class is. So we have had a lot of desktop, laptop users, but we've seen that number go down and mobile go up. So as we develop more tools with the website, we definitely make sure that it's mobile friendly and that we're doing our best to make it as mobile friendly as possible. It is a lot of information to have on a phone and a small screen, but I think we've been doing a good job so far. And this is definitely an area that we want to improve upon. Right now, people are directly typing in the website URL, but we really want to start working with our partners around the university to have them link directly to our maps. And I think that's just a lot of making sure they're aware that the map exists and you can actually direct people directly to a building through it. They think that you have to just give the maps.rutgers.edu link. So we've been working a lot with our partners to try to get them to interact and use with our website as well. So that's when our map is most heavily used. And even though Google has a lot of other interesting things that they track, those were the highlights, I think, from our first year. So what we're in right now is year 2 enhancements. Rutgers has a lot of facilities outside of just Rutgers University Newark, Rutgers University Camden, Rutgers University New Brunswick, and RBHS. So we wanted to integrate all of those owned and leased facilities that aren't necessarily in New Brunswick, Camden, and Newark proper. So that's part of what we're doing right now. We also wanted to address web compliance. While the first product is very pretty, we noticed that there was, in working with our OIT arm, there were some issues with creating it to be accessible for all. Now, having such a visual website it creates a little bit more, it's a little bit more complex than a text-based site. So we had to really work through, and I appreciate the partnership with them, because I think we came up with some good solutions for a very visual site. So, as I mentioned, we're actually launching next week, so unfortunately, I can't show you the live product. The demo's a little too quirky, so I didn't want to risk having issues here. But what we've decided to do is, you go to that main website again. You'll now have a button that will show off-campus facilities. If you click it, you'll see clusters of where these facilities are located. Some are actually very close to New Brunswick, so that's why you're seeing a 17 in New Brunswick or 26 in Newark, because it's not only accounting for the campuses, but also for those off-site facilities that are not directly on campus. So as you zoom in, you'll see that the clustering gets smaller and more facilities actually show up. You can zoom in more. I'm sure you guys recognize the one that we're in right now. You'll also notice, instead of the pop-up box that we had before, we moved to a drawer. That was actually something to address web accessibility, since it's easier to tab through a drawer than a box. So we are going to be, once this goes live, anytime you click on a building, it'll turn into a drawer, which people were getting when using the mobile app, but now they'll also get when using the desktop. So web accessibility. Where we really had issues were with highlighting and the colors that we used. So this is what it looks like, what I just showed you with year 1. And if this is a screen that kind of shows you what it looks like if you're colorblind. So not issues so far. You can kind of tell the difference between the buildings and parking lots. But then if you turn on any of the destination keys that I showed you before, like academics or athletics, it's really hard to tell which is which. So that's, I just showed you the colorblind screen. That's with it off, and that's with it on. So very difficult to say. So this is what we did in order to address that issue. The destination buttons on the left now are highlighted when you click on them, so you can see which ones are turned on. You're not guessing which ones you flipped on or off. We've also created an outline for all the buildings. And we also have put icons associated with each layer. So you can see right here, the healthcare is really clear to see which buildings are healthcare and the clusters. And this is an RBHS Newark. And that's with the colorblind off. So as I mentioned before, this is actually going live next week. So in theory, we will definitely do an announcement when it does. But I think why we were hoping to have it live for this, but we were working so well with OIT and found some other issues that we wanted to address, mainly to address tabbing and keeping tabbing short for those using a screen reader. Screen readers use tabbing, so we actually created a button that they can turn the tabbing on immediately when they get there. So I think we created a lot more functionality that we weren't initially counting on that's going to make the website even better. We just recently kicked off year 3, which is going to deal with some of that secure behind-the-scenes data that I was talking about before. This is our utilities data conversion and enhancement. So right now, all of the utilities data that we have in IP&O is stored in CAD. And while it's great to use and we've used it a lot, it's not as accessible and easy to manipulate and use. We wanted to make it more accessible to those throughout the division and those who may have a need to use it. Like, I think a good example is EMS, emergency services. When emergency services has an emergency, having it accessible in this web application in GIS would allow them to log into an iPad and log into the secure site and turn on the hydrants. So they'd be able to be in an area and see exactly where all the hydrants are located. Instead of printing out things, if there's a water leak, they don't have to go print out where the water lines are. They'll be able to pull it up on an iPad. So there's a lot of great uses for having this accessible through GIS. So some of the deliverables that will be constructed during this phase of the project is, as I just mentioned, converting all this existing data from CAD to GIS, which is a pretty enormous effort. It seems pretty simple, but it's not organized in a way right now that is immediately accessible to GIS. So it's really kind of taking all that data and constructing it into what's called a geodatabase in order to be accessible through and visible through GIS. We'll also create a system that any new data that's collected, either out in the field or through new construction from architects, will be immediately transferable into GIS. Base mapping, ortho imagery. So we just actually flew all three campuses. So we'll have updated ortho imagery. I'm sure that might be interesting to some of you in the room. There'll be high quality resolution images that we'll be able to share that will also be the background of our mapping. And we will also get, as you can see on the bottom right, 3D building data, which will be nice to have as well as we look to the future of our mapping system. So as I mentioned before, GIS really organizes all that data into a database. So we'll actually be able to break down a lot of the information that currently exists within utilities and link it to certain features and create points, lines, and polygons on the maps that will be related to this utilities data. So this is what our current behind-the-scenes secure site looks like, mainly because, as I said before, our existing CAD data doesn't readily transfer over into GIS. So we have some base information, but we're missing information of like when was it installed? Where's a point? What those circles on there, what are they? Is that a hydrant or what is it? So a lot of that will be carried through in this next phase of the project. And we're hoping to move to something like this that's very, gives you all the different subtypes of the lines you're looking at. It'll have symbology that we're working with on a lot of partners within IP&O to develop. That way it's recognizable and usable. So we're hoping to move to something like this. And I think this is even a better, even though our map will look differently, this is a good example of what's out there that you can see. When I was talking about before with the example with EMS, pulling up and seeing exactly where hydrants are located. That's something that's really good to have handy and that could be accessed in a moment's notice. The ortho imagery will be able to be turned on and off as part of this phase as well. So some of the future enhancements, I know I was talking before about getting a lot of feedback from users as far as what they like, what they don't like, what they want to see. Parking always, no surprise, comes up number one. And I think we've gotten a lot of great feedback that we definitely agree with. And we're hoping in a future phase that we can link automatically with the new parking system that was rolled out this year. That way, when you click on a parking lot, it'll give you real-time information of who's allowed to park there, because that does change. And the last thing we want to do is to create a static database that needs to be updated by someone anytime that changes. So we need to create a good way of doing that. This is actually, I believe, Minnesota. They give real-time information of what permits can park there at any one time, and it can be updated. We have that information with our buildings database right now, which is linked to Archibus. So anytime something changes in Archibus, it automatically updates in the map. With something like parking, we would really need to do a similar thing because so many people accessing it. My staff is right now actually collecting, and this is information from Newark, about all the curb cuts, where entrances are, where handicap parking spaces are, where ramps are. That way we can create a layer to be able to turn on the map to provide that information for users that would need it. So it's something that's taking, obviously a lot of time if you think about how geographically spread out our campuses are, how much space we have to cover. But we're actually doing pretty well. And we're hoping maybe not this next phase, but in 2 years that we can really address this and create a layer. University of Minnesota has a great layer that we're kind of modeling off of, that you're able to turn it on and you're able to see exactly where the handicap buses drop off, any of the spaces, accessible doors. It's really great. Another thing that we've heard a lot about is, okay, it's great you have buildings, but there's a lot of times I have events on campus and it's not necessarily a building, I'm meeting someone at Passion Puddle. Can I click on that? So that's part of the land use, land cover information, including statues and monuments, including things like Passion Puddle. So people will be able to click on them and get directions to them, and they become items on the map. And that's all I have for this morning. Do you guys have any questions or suggestions? Have you used the map? What would you like us to add? Yes?
You mentioned that the parking, who can park where changes.
Well, it doesn't necessarily, so there is currently regulations based on time of day for parking. So if you take something like the College Avenue deck, that's a good one. So it's faculty, staff all the time. Zone A commuter students can use it all day until, I think, 2 o'clock in the morning. And then residents can move their cars after 8 p.m. But visitors can or can't, I'm not sure can or can't park there. That's where it gets to, because visitors used to be able to park there. And sometimes due to construction or whatever, parking changes their regulations on who's able to park in which lots to accommodate all the users. And that does happen, not on a daily basis, but frequently enough that we don't want to have out-of-date information for users. A parking deck might be closed for a period of time because of construction. We want to be able to have that information readily available. So it changes enough that we want to make sure that people get a good experience coming here and don't get a parking ticket. Yes?
Who runs the software? Is it Rutgers directly or is it third party?
It's, so the background is Google, but we have done all the programming. All the data is ours, but kind of the glue that holds it together between Google and our data, that's the best way to describe it, is done by a third party. Yeah, consultant. AppGeo? Yes.
Anyone else? Questions? When did you think, I've forgotten, when did you think the parking component with live real-time parking information be completed?
Well, we haven't gotten the go-ahead for that component yet. We're right in the middle of utilities, and that's going to be until next June. So
That would come after.
Right, so usually knowing that utility is going to end next June, we'll probably have a discussion with our leadership to kind of say, these are the next pieces we'd like to work on. Right, no, we know it's a huge thing. We wanted to give Department of Transportation Services enough time to really kind of, this is their first year with their new system, so we wanted to make sure that they had enough time with it and that, possibly see if there was a link that we could link directly to it or how we could do that, which I think we can. It's just a matter of getting the right people in the room.
Very good.
Okay, thank you so much, everyone. Thanks, Jen.
Thanks.
Presentation.